Is it possible that a comeback hailed as the sacred moment of BTS's return after military hiatus actually begins with a question that feels piercing, uncomfortable, and almost taboo to say out loud? Why must only one name pay more for the same love? That question has hung in the air since January 16, 2026, since the announcement of BTS's fifth album, Erarang, appeared on Weverse, and since one small detail, initially seeming trivial, slowly turned into a spark that ignited global anger. A vinyl, a color, and a price that was not the same on the surface. Erarang is a symbol of reconciliation, nostalgia, and cultural pride. Its title itself refers to a Korean folk song laden with historical meaning, suffering, and unity. BTS did not choose this name without reason. It is their first album after mandatory military service, an album expected to mark a new era while reminding listeners of their roots. Yet right in the middle of that narrative of unity, an irony emerged that was hard to ignore. Among the 7 colored vinyl records representing the 7 BTS members, RM with silver, Jin with soft pink, Suga with minimalist clear, J-Hope with warm cream, Jimin with elegant burgundy, V with dramatic velvet red, Jungkook's vinyl stood apart. Not only because its color was named Orchid, but because its price was higher. Korean 130000. That number may seem small to some people, but to millions of fans it felt like a far larger message. Why should Jungkook's vinyl be subject to an additional charge? Why is only one member treated differently? And the most unsettling question of all, has Jungkook's popularity now shifted from a blessing into a commodity that can be squeezed without guilt? Within minutes of pre-orders opening, the Orchid vinyl sold out. On Korea's Naver store, it became the most expensive variant. On Amazon, its price was observed to be the highest compared to the others. On Weverse US, all vinyl versions sold out within about 20 minutes, but public attention had already locked onto one fact. Only Jungkook was being priced higher. For some fans, this was proof of Jungkook's immense drawing power. For others, it felt like a betrayal neatly wrapped in the logic of business. The reaction came like a tidal wave. Social media, especially Twitter, turned into a public courtroom. The word scam appeared repeatedly, not from outside critics, but from ARMY themselves, the very people who for years had defended BTS against every accusation. Now that accusation was directed inward at HYBE, the company long positioned as BTS's home. "They're scamming Jungkook's fans in broad daylight," wrote one user, with anger that bordered on despair. That sentence was not just a spontaneous outburst. It reflected a sense of betrayal by a system that was supposed to protect, not exploit. What made this controversy even more painful was its context. Erarang is not a Jungkook solo album. It is a group project, a symbol of 7 members returning together. Yet the unequal pricing created the impression that the financial burden of this project was not being shared fairly. Some fans even voiced sharper accusations that Jungkook's fans were indirectly subsidizing the group project by paying more, while simultaneously sacrificing Jungkook's potential solo chart performance because the higher cost could limit access. This is where the term dynamic member pricing began circulating widely. A concept that may be common in concert tickets or airline fares, but feels foreign, sundra unethical, when applied to an official album by a group that has long sold a narrative of equality. Dynamic pricing in this context means prices determined by demand for an individual, not by equal treatment among members. For fans who grew up with BTS since their early era, this concept feels like a crack in the foundation of values they have long believed in. The questions then grow larger and darker. If today Jungkook's vinyl can be sold at a higher price due to high demand, what stops similar practices in the future? Is this the beginning of normalizing prices based on individual popularity within a group? And if so, what does that mean for the concept of BTS as 7 individuals standing on equal footing? HYBE to this day has chosen silence. No official statement, no public clarification. That silence has only fueled speculation. Some fans try to understand, citing heavy traffic and high demand as logical reasons. Others, however, see the silence as a form of disregard for very real concerns. In a fandom world that is deeply emotionally connected, silence often hurts more than an unsatisfying answer. Most ironic of all, this controversy emerged at a time when Jungkook was once again placed at the visual center of Arirang's early teasers. The retro aesthetic, the camera focus, and the promotional narrative seemed to put him at the forefront. For some fans, this reinforced the impression that Jungkook's name is being aggressively maximized, both artistically and commercially. Is this a coincidence, or part of a larger strategy? BTS is scheduled to release Arirang on March 20, 2026, followed by a massive world tour spanning 5 continents, 34 cities, and 79 shows. Economically, this is a giant machine that will generate billions. Yet precisely within that grand scale, a single vinyl price 30,000 Korean wons higher feels like a small symbol of a much more complex issue. The relationship between companies, artists, and fans in the modern K-pop era. Is this merely a poorly executed pricing strategy, or a sign that the K-pop industry, even at its highest level, is beginning to test just how far fan loyalty can be stretched? These questions do not yet have definitive answers. But one thing is clear. For many ARMY, especially those who have Jungkook as their bias, the wound is real. And emotional wounds in the world of fandom often run far deeper than the numbers on a price tag. From this story, it is not about vinyl alone. It is about trust. About the thin line between appreciation and exploitation. About how a comeback that should have been celebrated instead opened a bitter discussion that can no longer be avoided. And most importantly, it is about a question that continues to echo. If fans' love is measured in money, who dares to ensure that the measure will not keep being raised? A wound felt not only in wallets, but in the collective emotions of a global fandom that for more than a decade has been built on mutual trust. The question has now shifted, becoming sharper and more personal. At what exact point does ARMY's loyalty stop being valued as love and start being treated as an unlimited business opportunity? Within hours after Arirang pre-orders opened, X timelines were flooded with voices no longer trying to sound polite. This was no longer a light discussion about price differences, but an outpouring of long-suppressed frustration. Is this even possible? Wrote one fan, seemingly unable to believe that buying an official album now felt like entering a dynamic pricing system straight out of the airline industry. The sentence was simple, yet it implied deep confusion. Since when did buying music turn into an experience that feels unfair? What makes this anger even more complex is the fact that many Jungkook fans find themselves in a paradoxical emotional position. On one hand, they feel proud. The Orchid vinyl sold out within minutes, proving just how immense Jungkook's appeal is. On the other hand, that pride turns bitter when accompanied by the realization that they must pay more to show the same support. This is where the inner conflict emerges. Is buying this more expensive vinyl an act of love, or a silent admission that such practices are acceptable? Some fans even describe this phenomenon as a psychological trap. When higher prices are framed as proof of exclusivity, some are tempted to display it as a flex. But critical voices quickly rise, warning that normalizing this attitude only paves the way for greater exploitation. Dynamic member pricing is not a flex, one user wrote, with a tone more weary than angry. This is not merely a protest, it is an attempt to stop a shift in values before it goes too far. In the context of the K-pop industry, this issue is especially sensitive because BTS has long been positioned as the antithesis of the exploitative practices often attributed to Korean entertainment agencies. The narrative built over the years is one of transparency, of a more humane relationship between artists and fans. Therefore, when HYBE, a company often praised for its innovation, appears to apply cold market logic, the disappointment feels multiplied. Many fans question the logic behind this decision. If demand for Jungkook's vinyl is so high, why is the chosen solution to raise the price instead of producing more stock? In basic economics, increasing supply is often a more consumer-friendly answer. Yet here, the choice made instead strengthens the perception that scarcity and popularity are deliberately being leveraged to maximize short-term profit. Another equally important question begins to surface. What are the long-term impacts on internal fandom dynamics? BTS is not just a music group. They are a complex emotional ecosystem. Each member has a massive fan base, but equality has always been the core foundation. When one member is treated differently financially, subtle divisions begin to form. Discussions that once centered on music and album concepts now shift toward debates about fairness and corporate priorities. Some fans even connect this issue to broader concerns about Jungkook's own career future. The accusation that higher prices could sabotage chart performance is not merely an empty conspiracy theory. In the world of global charts, accessibility is key. The more expensive a product is, the more limited its reach becomes. If Jungkook's vinyl is priced higher, the potential for mass purchasing, often a fandom strategy, can be hindered. Ironically, the popularity used to justify the price increase may actually obstruct greater statistical achievements. Amid all of this, HYBE's silence continues to fuel speculation. The absence of an official statement creates a vacuum quickly filled by the most extreme narratives. Is the company deliberately testing fans' patience? Is this a market experiment to see how far ARMY are willing to pay more? Or is it simply a communication failure amplified by the sheer scale of the fandom? International media have begun to spotlight the issue, expanding the discussion beyond the core fan circle. The term scam, used by ARMY themselves, becomes a striking headline, reflecting just how serious the sense of betrayal is. For the wider public, this controversy serves as an example of how even the world's biggest group is not immune to criticism when business practices are perceived as violating principles of fairness. Yet beneath the anger and accusations lies a quieter sadness. Many fans express a sense of exhaustion from constantly having to defend, justify, and rationalize decisions that feel misaligned with them. Exhaustion from love that feels as if it is being measured in numbers. In fandom culture, this kind of emotional fatigue is often an invisible warning sign, but its effects can last a long time. The Orchid vinyl controversy ultimately is not just about Jungkook or HYBE. It is a reflection of the growing tension between idealism and capitalism in the global music industry. BTS, as a cultural symbol, now stands at a difficult crossroads: how to maintain a narrative of equality and warmth amid increasingly aggressive market pressures. Will this anger fade over time, swallowed by the euphoria of the album release and the world tour? Or will it leave a deeper mark, changing how fans view every commercial decision in the future? One thing is certain: wounds of trust do not heal simply because products sell out. And when loyalty begins to have its value questioned, the industry must ask itself, what is the true price of a love that has been taken for granted for far too long? At this point, the question that keeps circling in fans' minds is no longer as simple as, why is the price higher? But has shifted into something far more fundamental and unsettling. What is HYBE actually putting at stake by choosing to remain silent? In the modern entertainment industry, silence is not an empty space. It is a message. And for the millions of ARMY waiting for clarification, that silence feels increasingly heavy, as if confirming that their unease is not a priority. As the days pass without an official statement, narratives begin to spiral out of control. Some believe this controversy is merely a temporary storm that will dissipate once Erarang is released, and the world stages are once again filled with cheers. Others, however, see it as an early signal of a more serious change in direction, a shift in values in which BTS, once positioned as a symbol of resistance against inhumane industry practices, must now negotiate with an ever more naked logic of capital. The album Erarang itself, with all its cultural and emotional symbolism, now carries a burden that was never planned. It is no longer just a work of art or a marker of a comeback. It has become an arena where trust is being tested. Every teaser, every promotional photo, especially those placing Jungkook at the visual center, is reread through a lens of suspicion. Is that focus purely artistic or part of a colder commercial strategy? These questions may sound excessive, but in a fandom that is deeply emotionally interconnected, perception is often as powerful as fact. What makes this situation even more complex is BTS's position as a global icon. Whatever decision HYBE makes will not only affect a single album release, but also set standards for the industry as a whole. If the practice of dynamic member pricing is deemed acceptable and allowed to pass without meaningful criticism, that precedent could open the door to the normalization of exploitation based on individual popularity. Today it is Jungkook, tomorrow who? And ultimately, Does the concept of a group still hold the same meaning when the value of each member begins to be calculated separately? On the other hand, there are voices attempting to see the bigger picture, reminding others that BTS has weathered far greater storms. They argue that one pricing decision, however controversial, does not automatically erase the long history of the relationship between BTS and ARMY. Yet even these more moderate voices acknowledge one thing: how a company responds to criticism is just as important as the decision itself. Transparency is no longer a bonus. It is a necessity. As the March 20th, 2026 release date approaches, this tension has not fully subsided. The promised world tour, spanning 5 continents and dozens of cities, appears as a promise of future euphoria. But beneath that anticipation lies a small wound that remains open, one that may not be visible from the outside, but is felt by those who have stood closest all along. In the end, the Jungkook Orchid vinyl controversy may be remembered as a mere footnote in BTS's long journey. Or conversely, it could become a turning point, the moment when a global fandom begins to demand a more fair and honest relationship with the industry it supports. The answer depends on the next steps: whether HYBE chooses to listen, explain, and correct course, or allows time to bury the unanswered questions. Because in the world of K-pop, where emotion and money often walk side by side, one thing remains certain: fans' love is not an unlimited resource. And when a community begins to ask whether it is being valued or exploited, it is no longer just a controversy, it is a warning.